listening to Resist and Restore, a podcast from the Circle of Hope pastors where we're extending the table of our dialogue. That's our tagline. I'm Johnny.
And I'm Rachel.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Ben.
We're still figuring out how to do this podcast, so that's why I told you with the tagline, so you know it's connected to the title, but it's not part of the title. It's fun to do this together and to figure it out with y'all too. We always love hearing from you, so if you want to talk back to us, there's opportunities for that. Email resistandrestorepodcast@circleofhope.net. But I'm excited for this show. We're talking about Mother God to begin with. We had a whole discussion on our parents listserv about this. Rachel will lead us in that. And then we're going to talk about something called village parenting, where we parent together. How do you even do that in a pandemic, right? That's the question. And how are we doing it? Ben will get us going there. We got to start over because it's not Rachel that did that.
Don't start over.
Keep going.
Keep rolling with it.
Julie's
it's going to be
Mother
Julie.
of God, and then at the end, spiritual show and tell. Rachel will lead us in that. So we're all getting a part in this one. It's exciting. What do you think?
It's exciting.
There we go.
Julie's doing all of her laughing silently. I'm not sure why.
She has that pillow. You should have had the toilet paper that in front of you. You could have been able to do the laughing silently as well.
They're talking about helping the audio work for the podcast with toilet paper and pillows.
Rachel's
we really
so
are figuring it out.
She likes to give the context to everything so that you know exactly what we're talking about and you never feel left out.
I have made some epic toilet paper forts right here on my desk to insulate the sound because we don't have a studio. I'm just doing this in my bedroom, y'all.
Because at the beginning of the pandemic, we were buying lots of toilet paper like we were in a nuclear war.
I didn't.
All this toilet paper.
This is where I keep my toilet paper right here in the closet. Where do you guys keep your toilet paper?
Yeah, in a closet. But if you live in the city, often the corner stores have them, and you don't need to stock up from Walmart.
I'm getting corner store toilet paper.
I always get corner store toilet paper, and they never run out.
I'm getting a bidet.
That's the right thing to do.
Okay, let's move into our first segment.
All right, tell us, Julie.
This first segment is called Talkback. We're always finding ways to generate dialogue and talk back to one another. And this week, like Johnny said, we have a parents listserv, and one of our parents wrote about a conversation they had with their daughter. At bedtime, she said, "Do wishes come true?" And he answered, "I think sometimes, maybe not by magic, but like how we wished for a baby and then you were born." And this is what she said back. She said, "I wish for a mother God." So this parent was asking the other parents for ways to help her connect to Mother God. So what do you think about that idea to begin with, and how do we do that? Why would we do that? And what is this? What do our children have to teach us about this?
To wish for a mother God. I mean, that's just great. I love that. I love that story. That's like perfect. You know how people do the kind of conversation with their kids on social media? It's like me, my kid, me, my kid. It was kind of in that style. I liked it, and it was that might even meme a little bit. Like this little child is leading us, I think.
Mm-hmm. My mind immediately went to a phrase that's often quoted at our mother blessings, which is kind of a communal ritual that we do to welcome new mothers into motherhood. But I forget who said it, but mother is the name for God on the lips of children everywhere. And so I thought, well, it's so great. It's so great for Frances because she gets this embodiment of God's love in her own mother, Rosie, who is a wonderful mother. And it also took me to how when my kids were little, we always talked about mother and baby animals. And I was always taking them to the zoo. And so we were constantly noticing how mother animals take care of their babies. And I love how in the Bible, in Hosea, compares God's self to a mother bear. And then, Jesus compares his love for the people of Jerusalem as a hen longing to gather them together. And so we really do have these examples of God as mother, but mainly in us.
You just did something kind of clutch right there. You even demonstrated that commitment that we have to who God is when you said God's self. What kind of grammar is that?
Circle of hope.
That's how we do. We try to avoid referring to God as male as often as possible. It's not like against the rules, but acknowledging that God is bigger than male or female is pretty crucial. Like like we have a big like volunteer system, so like people there's always partners on a team doing stuff, and invariably someone will like publish something that has gender exclusive language for God, and we're like, what? How is this still happening? We've tried for so long.
Or they sing the sexist version of "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and then Christmas is over.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's not over.
Born that we may no more may die, y'all. Never say
so
men.
Much in our culture, it's so much.
Born to save us from the earth.
Not the sons of earth, the daughters too.
Our Easter hymns too.
Mm-hmm.
But patriarchy is where a lot of our theology comes from, and even it's the place where the Bible is seated as well. It's been a part of human culture since anyone can remember, and before that. So it has shaped a lot of our thinking and definitely our language.
Yeah, and it does. It's so limiting. When we get locked into thinking of God in these binary gendered ways, then inevitably our reference point is limited to our own experience. And I think we really do need to help each other keep growing into an expansive sense of God that I think our children can demonstrate, that's beyond patriarchal language or even just a gendered expression of God. But it helps to say Mother God and to imagine the nature and the characteristics of God that are associated with mothering for many people. Of course,
Absolutely.
Not everybody, but.
I mean, I needed a mother God because Father God had too much baggage for me because of my own earthly father. For Jesus, Father was personal too. And using Mother God helps you break out of the arbitrary codification of the nature of God, and it just helps you know that you can imagine, you can flourish, you can think about God in a lot of ways, And the Bible is filled with this imagery. It's curious how we choose to codify the theology into doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, it was arbitrary in the first place, like especially language. Like a careful person today, I think this is it's an easy kind of way to at least address this. A careful person is you're just demonstrating care. You're demonstrating love when you use like different language. Like I was just listening to a podcast where, even just how a language works when like you're just describing like the person who does this, if you have to say like, I'm getting tied up in knots, but like the one who would like to do this work would do well to encourage themselves, you have to switch to that, like that. And that's technically like bad grammar to say themselves in that moment. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Is this stupid?
Yeah, no, it's not stupid. I think it not only demonstrates care, it demonstrates truth. Like, I mean, the truth is that God's Spirit is poured out to all people. And I'm thinking about the words of Christ, the Lord is risen today, that we sing at Easter. And instead of sons of men and angels say, we sing, all creation wakes to say. And so we're demonstrating the truth that, like, it's not just sons, it's daughters are here too. Daughters are alive, and God is available
Absolutely
to us daughters.
So the careful communicator will, I think, flip-flop. The language doesn't work to get it all right all the time, but so it makes sense to say her and she as often as him and he when we're talking about God, because you're going to paint yourself into corners linguistically. So it's just good to change it. I was saying the podcast that I was listening to, they they were just talking about a generic person, and they just, used a female gender to just describe the generic person. Like, even that, I think, is something that a careful communicator does.
I agree. And getting out of doing one or the other with impunity helps you. Just be flexible. Even referring to God as God repeatedly is oddly depersonalizing too. So I like that flexibility.
Like referring to God as, oh, you mean like God's self
God
or whatever?
Self all the time.
Yeah. It doesn't work that well. Yeah.
I have a connection with God.
But it does signal, it's unique enough that it signals a more expansive, understanding of God than just a gendered one.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's a spicy meatball we should get into in the next section.
Well, I know we're going to move to the next section soon, but I want to acknowledge what you were saying, Rachel, where you're saying this isn't just about taking care of women. This is about describing the truth. And I want to make sure that that's what I'm saying too, because you're absolutely right.
Yes. And going back to this Talkback discussion, like, we want to raise children to know the truth of God in an expansive way that is not defined by binary or gendered picture only. And so when we can help our kids know God's love through and character through mothering, I think it helps them grow up to relate to a God that is more expansive.
I'm so glad you listened to our show. It's so good to connect with you in this way, and I hope that you keep listening to it. If you want others to hear it too, give us a positive review wherever you listen to it, subscribe to our channel as well, and share money with us. You can do that at circleofhope.net/sharing. Other ways that you can connect with us are at our Sunday meeting, which is still online during this time. circleofhope.net/online meeting at 5 o'clock on Sundays is where you can connect and worship with us. We record it, so you can watch it also on our YouTube channel if you can't tune in live. Also, we have cells, many of which are still online at circleofhope.net/cells. These circles of 10 are meant to nourish you spiritually and connect you to community where Jesus is best revealed. So go to circleofhope.net/cells to find out more, and pray along with us every day at circleofhope.net/dailyprayer and circleofhope.net/dailyprayerdeeper. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to talk back to us, email us at resistandrestorepodcast@circleofhope.net.
Okay, y'all, let's talk about village parenting. This is like our jam for what we're going to do with kids in the church. Village parenting is something we've been working on for more than a decade to describe the sense of a tribe that we want our children to experience so that they can catch the gospel rather than sign up for it like they're being conscripted into a theological dogma or something like that. So rather than Sunday school, we have a Sunday meeting that has an idea for how the kids are going to participate. We don't have classes or teachers, even though we kind of often default to that language. We keep pushing against it because we just want to be the body together, wrapping these kids up in God's love and exposing them to real life faith of adults who love them. And so we say the gospel is better caught than taught. Not that we ought not to teach it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm working with, that I need your help with, because here in the pandemic, of course, everything's jacked up. Many kids in the Philadelphia region are going back to school this week, and parents are trying to figure that out. There's a lot of stress, and we're in month 95, it seems like, of having our Sunday meetings primarily online, and our idea of that big warm family system just permeating these kids' hearts feels pretty weak, honestly. Mm-hmm. You know, our whole idea doesn't work as well when it's not in person and everyone's isolated. So all this stress, had me thinking, when, basically we're all going to be, if you have kids, which all of us do here, right? You have tell us real quick a bit your kids' ages. What are we working with when it comes to now being homeschool parents? My kids are 9 and 6, first grade and fourth grade.
My kids are 4 and 7, pre-K and second grade.
My kids are 9 and 12. are 4th and 7th grade.
And I have 2 high schoolers, a sophomore and a senior, 15 and 17.
We got like the whole spread, pre-K all the way to senior. So anyways, so the school year's starting, and I had this weird idea that I wanted to like have a Bible class for my kids. And I think it's because I'm feeling kind of insecure without that community. Like, what am I going to do to, have these kids know about God and be connected to God? And I was like, well, maybe we should just add a subject since we're the teachers anyway. Let's have a Bible class and I'll be a Bible teacher. What do you guys think of that?
I was so shocked, Ben, when you first said that to me, especially coming from you, because you, of all people, have always helped our kids relate to God and the Bible through like imaginative, playful, relational environment. And so even the words Bible class or like, for real, I can't believe you're saying that, because it sets up, at least in my mind, it sets up this idea of like teaching content so that kids have the right answer. I mean, it doesn't always mean that, but that's the context. At least it's also the context that I came from, that I grew up in.
So when Ben teaches his kids the Bible, they'll eventually reject the Bible, and that's where I come in to teach them again the Bible, right? Because it's so hard to hold on to whatever you got as a kid into your adulthood. It's not really meant for that.
Right. We don't want to set up that thing that they have to rebel against. And I kind of liked the idea, though, Ben, because I think, especially if you're talking about the story form of learning the Bible, and I think little kids can understand the stories of Jesus in the Gospels way better than they can get some of the wildness in the Old Testament. Maybe if we reserve that for the older kids, like Pete Enns mentions in his book. What was that book called, guys?
Telling God's Story.
Telling God's Story. Yeah, that's a good outline, I think, for how to teach the Bible to your kids in a way that they might not have to rebel against. But if we keep it to that story form, I think it could be really useful. I'm thinking of like, even though I got too much doctrine as a kid, the stories do come back to me in moments when I need them.
Which stories?
Mainly the stories of Jesus. I really did like fall in love with the person of Jesus, I think, even as a kid through those stories. And so I think that could be really useful.
My dad is still sending me Bible lessons, though, is the issue. He hasn't gotten over that. He's still sending me things that justify his worldview in order to try to convince me of it. He actually told me to read the Bible the other day.
Well, a lesson is different than a story. But sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
I thought, I have a Bible degree. I think I've read the Bible before, Dad.
Yeah.
It was a little surprising to me. One of the gifts that children give us, though, as we try to, and I'm glad y'all aren't doing this, but as we try to reduce the Bible into object lessons, moral lessons, doctrine, rigid interpretation, kids teach us to be free. They have imaginations. And imagination is essential for faith. And I should remember this because I don't read a lot of fiction. But reading fiction, especially fantastical fiction, allows you to imagine new possibilities in a new world that really the Bible should also lend itself to. But the way that we've so often taught it, it does kind of the opposite somehow. Mm-hmm. You have these amazing stories in the Bible that are ripe for imagining the world in new ways and imagining God. But we make it all boring and reduce it down to something.
Well, I think what we're reducing it down to is the lesson. The Bible is about moral instruction, and especially for children, because they're always doing things that are morally abhorrent.
They're very immoral.
Biting, stealing.
Yeah, it's like you don't really need your parents telling you, and that's why you have to brush your teeth, because God promised. God gave you the rainbow to promise you life, and he's not going to destroy us. So why would you destroy yourself?
So you didn't go for the Levitical purity laws to teach your kids how to brush teeth. You went with the promise, huh? That's
no,
good.
I don't know. Noah was coming to mind because it's like one of those stories that we teach children all the time. You have the Precious Moments dolls. You have the like play school version of Noah's Ark because there are aminals in it. They're aminals. But it's like, it's one of the most terrible stories in the Bible. And it's like one of the spookiest too. And it comes from a section of the Bible that is like so distant from our concept of reality. You know, these prehistorical stories, the first 11 chapters of Genesis are often called prehistory because it's like this stuff in the storyteller's mind happened like long before anyone was alive or anyone was writing anything down. It's like this is a, you know, even, sorry y'all, mythological, you know, this kind of deep story that we don't know exactly where it comes from. And of course, evangelicals and especially the more fundamental strain of the family have kind of reduced it down to this kind of historical account and then a moral account. I think, Johnny, you were writing about reality and revelation on your blog this week, thinking about truth in that way. Can you say a little bit about that? Because I think that's hitting in here.
The Bible is best appreciated when it reveals something new about the world. And God is revealing something that's mysterious in its own way. But we reduce it to either a set of rules, a set of facts, a set of reasoning to come up with our conclusion, or we reduce it just to our personal experiences with it. It's not a good way, I think, to nurture faith, to rely entirely on data or to rely entirely on your experiences. Those things help. But revelation, especially when it happens in community, is really good. Like a question you might ask yourself when you're talking to your kid about the Bible is, what is the kid saying that's teaching me something? And that's the kind of mysterious communal revelation that can happen.
Yeah, and that's village parenting. It's that
right.
we are together in this, and it's not some kind of hierarchical data transfer. It's that we actually are a family in Christ, and God is doing stuff in our midst. And that's actually even why it's not even just Bible-centric. The Bible grounds us in who we are, and it gives us the revelation of Jesus and his people. But our life with God is bigger than the Bible, too, because God is doing stuff now in our midst. And we were talking in the opening segment about, you know, thinking about Mother God from a 5-year-old, and she's leading us even. So you're saying I shouldn't have a Bible class?
Well, one of the issues is you're talking about Noah, and then you're talking about it being a prehistorical thing, and maybe I just shouldn't teach it, because the focus I got to when you said that was, I'm going to show them the seam in the story that the Priestley author added when they put in 7 birds so they could make the sacrifices that came later on in Israel's history in the prehistorical story.
They implanted the codified kind of ritual into the old story to be a source for the
yeah.
ritual.
So if I'm teaching kids the Bible lesson, all of a sudden they hear about the Wellhausen hypothesis.
Yeah. Maybe you guys shouldn't teach the class because it would be graduate level. But I think it could be useful coming from the community and coming from our parents. And I just want to throw in an encouraging word to parents and caregivers. At least I hope this is encouraging, that like what has the most power to plant a seed of faith in our kids is not how much we know and explicitly teach about the Bible or even say about God, but it is what we truly care about, like who we love. If you love Jesus and organize your life around that love, I can almost guarantee you will plant a seed of faith in your kids, because they pick up not really on what we say, but on what we actually care about, what we love, what we do, way more than what we say. And
Totally.
so, but there's a great opportunity, I think, to pass on that love to our kids, even in the most basic ways.
Wouldn't it be great if they grew up with the idea that God loved them and they knew that as demonstrated by their family and by their community? You know, for me as an adult, that's still the hardest lesson to learn. You know, as much of a Bible nerd as I am, that's still the part that's hard, you know? And so exegeting that and applying it to our children is really an opportunity for them to hold on to their faith, as it will invariably get challenged. And if we don't tamp down their imagination, I think that really we're setting them up really for good things.
But I mean, we do have to say it though, right? Another thing that I would say, Rachel, I liked your assurance of like your genuine faith will influence your children, and you can trust that. You can trust God to be doing something with that. But I also think that you're like, your experience with Jesus is going to come out of your mouth too.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be good to have, especially in this totally disorienting time, and in this time when it seems like we're in charge of our children's influences more than ever. It's like this is like an opportunity. Okay, I'm in charge. I have to be in charge. I have to organize my life right now around this children's education. Like, my family was going to go back to work this fall. Like, Gwyneth was going to get a more permanent job. And she's been home for most of the kids' lives because now we've got them all into full day school. And, nope, we're not doing that. So like, it's just such a shift. And there's such a sacrifice for it. It seems like I want to bring my best intention to it. And why wouldn't the Bible be a part of that?
Yeah, I agree, Ben. And I think that helping our kids understand the Bible through, going back to what Rachel said, understanding the Bible through Jesus. So much of my early Bible education was like Old Testament stories that were boiled down to heroic acts of these ancestors of the faith who turned out to be really complex people. And, when I got into the stories myself, saw that it wasn't that simplistic or applicable. So how do we teach the Bible in a way that helps our kids understand what the Bible is doing and interpret it through Jesus, rather than just boil it down to a moralistic lesson? And part of it is helping them to wonder and to ask questions and to not have all the answers for them. And I think it is hard to resist that. I've heard from parents during this pandemic who are getting these deep theological questions from their young children who are imagining and asking things that are hard to answer, even for adults. And one of the things I've said is that it's okay to not try to answer it, but to agree with the question.
Yeah.
And to affirm the question, and to say even that this reality of God is mysterious to me too. And here's how I'm working with that. Here's how I know God. You're helping me know God by asking these questions. That kind of relating is actually freeing. Even though we have to manage our own anxiety as parents and our desire to want to give the answer. We have to override that and wonder with them.
And that conversation can happen in the most normal activities of life. Like, I think dinner time is a great time for letting kids talk about whatever comes up. Bedtime. I know a lot of families in our congregation use the Jesus Storybook Bible to just tell some of these stories and get the questions going. But it also could be in like whatever we as parents care about and love to do. Like Ben loves to look at the birds. I'm sure his boys are learning about faith as, he lets them in on that. I love music, and so I'd often plop down at the piano when my kids were little, and that's how they learned a lot of worship songs, just through me worshiping. So whatever you like to do, I think is an opportunity to bring your kids in on your life of faith.
And it might even get you back into these questions yourself. I'm just thinking about parents, teaching your kids something about God in the Bible might get you engaged in it in a new way too. And it might allow us to prioritize our own curiosity.
And the Bible is such a daunting document, and it has all of this kind of purchase in especially Christian culture, small c Christian culture. And we say it's worth a lifetime of study. That's something that we repeat a lot around Circle of Hope. And it's easy to kind of get out of touch with that, or just lose the discipline. But like what you were saying, Rachel, like bringing it in just because it's our thing. Like I'm into it. When my kids were little, sometimes I'd read them a book and then they'd want another one. So I'd be like, okay, we'll turn off the light and I'll tell you a story from my heart. Mm-hmm. That was the word that I used. And sometimes it would be a made up story, usually where they're the main characters, but then often it would be a Jesus story, One time Jesus was walking along and people asked him if he was going to pay this tax. And, you know, a tax is like money that you have to give the government or the authorities because they're in charge and you're not. And Jesus' disciple Peter was like, yeah, of course he's going to pay that tax. He's like an upstanding citizen. Don't step to Jesus. And then he went to Jesus, and Jesus was like, well, I don't have any money. Why don't you go catch a fish? You're a fisherman. You're good at catching fish. Go catch a fish and pull a coin out of there, one to pay your tax and one to pay mine. And then he went and fished, and there was a fish in his mouth. Jesus.
A coin in his mouth.
Oh, yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. No, Peter caught the fish with his mouth. I would probably change it like that. No. And then Peter bit the fish like he was, you know, a monster bear. No. Then there was a coin in his mouth, and that was awesome. Jesus did crazy stuff like that all the time. Go to sleep.
That's how you end up with kids eating money, by the way. They're going to put coins in their mouth.
Oh, yeah. That's a dangerous story to tell. You shouldn't tell that. Kids are going to put the quarters in their mouth. They're going to swallow it. They're going to not be able to go through x-ray machines. They're never going to be allowed to have an MRI.
Yeah, like that myth about gum staying in your stomach for eternity.
Is this where we're going to end? Really?
I swallow gum with impunity.
No, you don't.
I don't even chew it.
Village parenting. One more thing to say. I think that it is okay to not know what to do. We do need each other. Mm-hmm. So even when we can't be together physically and our kids aren't being parented by all the adults in the room, and you know, we feel that sense of community that we're used to, just calling each other up and saying, this is my struggle. This is what I'm feeling as a parent. This is what came up last night. Putting this question out on the parents listserv is a perfect demonstration of village parenting in the pandemic. We're not doing this alone. We do rely on this Holy Spirit at work in the body, and our children need that too. And they feel it when we live into that together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good final word. Thanks for talking about this. If you want to get more involved with village parenting, or if you're not on the parents listserv and you're part of Circle of Hope, hit us up at Resist and Restore podcast at circleofhope.net.
So our last segment is called Spiritual Show and Tell. It's when we bring what's been nourishing to our souls recently. So let's talk about it, pastors. What's been nourishing your soul recently?
I'm really excited to tell you about this. Drew Hart wrote a new book. Just came out this week. Who Will Be a Witness? He calls himself an Anabaptist.
Blacktivist.
Yeah, so he's an Anabaptist, he's an activist, and he's into Black theology. And this book is about how the church can move toward anti-racism and towards justice, which it has in history, but also it's gotten all mixed up with systems of this world, white supremacy, racism, and so on. And so what Drew is doing is pulling out the bad stuff and moving us forward to have a new vision for how the church can participate in God's world redemption project, God's anti-racist project. It nourished my soul to know that this kind of stuff is out there and that Drew cares about it. It encourages me as a pastor that I can do this too. And I hope it nourishes yours too. You can buy that today if you want. We'll put a link for you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Johnny. I recommend Drew as well. And side note, he is married to a wonderful woman named Renee, who was my roommate in college.
Oh, I didn't know that you were that connected. I mean, I knew we were friends with him, but I didn't know it was like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm. What else has been nourishing?
Rich Mullins always nourishes my soul. Super white dude from the 90s. In contrast to what Johnny's talking about. But he came to mind when we were talking about village parenting, because he wrote this song, Boy Like Me, Man Like You, which I think exemplifies the kind of imagination that I want my kids to have about Jesus and relating to him. He's talking to Jesus in the song. And he says, did they tell you stories about the saints of old? Stories about their faith. Stories like that make a boy grow bold. Stories like that make a man walk straight.
I I know that song.
I love that song. I could sing all the lines are just perfect in it. So Rich Mullins comes to mind often. He's just the soundtrack of my heart. And I wanted to get him in there. If you want some occasionally cheesy but not trash Christian music from the 90s, check out Rich Mullins. Any of it's good. All the stuff's on YouTube. I'll post a couple links.
You got anything, Joel? What's been nourishing your soul lately?
Well, I want to say something that feels more substantive than this, but what first came to mind is that I am cultivating plants. I love tending plants and growing things, and it really brings me joy. And I've run out of room in my home. But I recently moved this old ladder that I had down to my front room that gets the most light. And I was figuring out how to hang on the ladder small pots and jars of cuttings of plants that I'm trying to root. And it brought me joy to do that because I always feel like I'm participating with something that God is doing. And I can see it. I can watch it happen. And sometimes I can't always see it in my own life that something new is growing. It's hard to feel it in the midst of this pandemic. It's hard to see it in the life of the church when we can't be together. So I think that cultivating new plants is bringing me joy because it really is helping me tap into the truth that God is still doing something new in the world and in me, and that the joy of our mission with Jesus is that we get to participate in that, and we're instrumental in that. And I want to keep living that way. That brings me joy. So growing plants reminds me of that.
I love being in your garden too. It's evident of your joy when I'm around the plants that you grow and nurture.
How long does it take you to water all those plants, though? Like, is it? It seems like it just seems hard.
It's not.
It's not that hard. It just
No.
Oh.
Like
It's not hard, and it's like
45 minutes.
No, it doesn't
8
take
minutes?
that long at all. Yeah, maybe 8 minutes, like once a week. The
Really
saying
once a
that
week for 8 minutes.
yes,
I really
don't-
have no
we
idea
don't know what we're
I'm
doing. Okay,
Yeah.
you are. You have.
It doesn't take long, but that saying that the best thing for a garden is the gardener's shadow, because the idea is like that the gardener's tending and watching what's happening and paying attention when something needs to be pruned or needs more water. That part is what brings me joy. Just like looking over the plants, seeing what new thing is happening, seeing that nothing's happening yet, but just keep checking. That shadow part is joyful to me.
I have a tree in my backyard, Jewel, that is from you. And so I look at it.
That.
Yep, I look at it every day. It's really taken off.
Nice.
Something that's been nourishing my soul this summer is the ocean. The ocean always calms me, but in the pandemic, it's been one of the more accessible things to do, like one of the safer places to be, especially if you go at like 6 a.m, like my family. My family's been getting into surfing this summer. Everyone except me, but I think I'm kind of inspired now to try it because I need to learn new ways to play. But just even being at the ocean is so nourishing to my soul because it helps me to see the wide horizon. It just immediately reminds me that there's more options, like that I usually tunnel. My mind sort of makes a tunnel with my thoughts and options for my life and the church. And being there reminds me that God is so much bigger than what I'm imagining. And then hearing like the constant rolling in of the waves and being out in the waves and feeling this power, greater than myself is just really good for me. Not just soothing, but expansive. So it's been a joy to be able to live just an hour from the Jersey Shore and have that option this summer. Anything else nourishing your souls today, pastors?
I just want to add that people can write to us to tell us what's nourishing them, their own spiritual show and tell. We would love to hear it. We might even share it on this podcast.
And where should they write, Jewel?
Resist and Restore podcast at circleofhope.net.
Resist and Restore podcast at circleofhope.net.
Wonderful. Yes, we want to hear from you. You encourage us, and we want to keep encouraging each other. So thanks for being here today.